Hello, yes, welcome back to the continuing saga of the Book of Mormon. After the video, which did moderately okay, where I talked about my understanding or the things I know of the Book of Mormon, Joseph Smith and all his cohorts and fellow sheep. There's a couple of comments under the video, all quite respectful, not very inflammatory, which is good to hear. There was one chap who tried to have a go, but he didn't last long when faced with one or two home truths. The other one was by a chap called Leo Michael E.K. I now understand that his name may actually be pronounced Michaelek. I do apologise. Who went into some length trying to debate and decry everything that I'd said. Obviously, I can't respond to things like that straight away. I do have a full-time job, and it's getting amazingly busy at the moment, which is very good, but we're not used to it being busy, so it's kind of overtaking. But I have some free time this evening. The shirt has been washed over the weekend, thank you. Had a lovely weekend with the boys going go-karting at Leeds, not far from here. There was a video on my channel. It's on this. Literally, I just posted it to the channel so my boys could watch it. But I'm not here to talk about go-karting, which was a lot of fun. And next time I'll probably do it myself. But as I said, this chap, Leo Michael E.K., went into some depth to basically list the reasons he considered me to be wrong and some of the things I was saying were wrong. Let's see how well that goes, because obviously I'm going to go do a rebuttal. All of his comment is below the previous video, which I will link here. Obviously, there's a lot at the end. He did it in two sections. He basically went point by point and then decided there was a lot more to say. But when he went into what else he wanted to say right at the end, a couple of the sections he went over the same ground. I'm not going to cover them again because I will cover them in the first part of this. But the final part is the big kahuna, so to speak, about polygamy, which I will go into at the end of this little response, this rebuttal. So I'm going to put things. I have paper here because you know what I'm like with my short-term memory. I'll try to get through this with minimal edit. But what I'm going to do is, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down some rules, because this is my house, so to speak. My house, my rules. When you enter the house of God, you go by their rules. Everything they say is true. Everything is scripture, is canon, so to speak. My house, my rules. There is no God. Therefore, rule 1. If you claim God did it, or said it, or commanded it, this automatically negates all of those aspects immediately, as none of those things actually happened. These are statements made by man to terrorize, command, and rule over others. The concept of heaven and hell were human constructs to terrify people into abiding by the word of their God. If you do not come to church and pray, you will go to hell and have eternal torment for not going into a church and speaking to your imaginary friend. It's terrorizing. It's basically what it is. Heaven is the good side. If you come into our church, it'll all be lovely. But if you don't, you're going to spend eternity, which is another human construct and another hellish construct. You'll be punished and poked in the bum by Satan for all eternity. Rule 2. God made me do it is a self-made excuse for your own greed, avarice, perversions, or lasciviousness, so to speak. Counterpoint to that, God told me not to do it. A self-made excuse for your own ignorance, arrogance, or cowardice. Rule 3 is the biggie. Just as the Bible isn't proof of anything written in the Bible is true, the same applies for the Book of Mormon. Claiming something mentioned in the Bible is proof that the Bible is true. It has the same weight as claiming King's Cross Station proves that the Harry Potter book series is a factual account of true events. It's an old adage. Bible apologists and Christian apologists go to great lengths to say, wow, well, the Bible mentions the sea and this lake, but then again, Spider-Man mentions New York. It's the same parallel. Golden example, the golden metaphor I want to put out there, looking more into Joseph Smith than I did last time, and I looked into a little bit. This time I've gone into a little bit more, and my golly, there's no defending the guy. But for the great metaphor, for the great understanding of Joseph Smith, who he was, who his sensibilities is, why he did the things he did, Joseph Smith is Donald Trump. That's the best analogy I can get. And if you think of all the worst aspects of Donald Trump, which is basically everything about him, I am not a fan. I'm not as My favourite quote from Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez.
Let me make myself clear. I don't celebrate rapists.
I'm in 100% agreement. Why anybody, anywhere, would want to celebrate this person who is the absolute definition of scum is beyond me. But power, I'll get onto this later, but people who strive for power attracts powerful people, and their interactions aren't necessarily for the greater good. So, to follow that, Joseph Smith is Donald Trump, the Book of Mormon is Fox News. Thereby, anything said or claimed by either is immediately discounted as being untrue, false, or manipulative to the uneducated masses. Let's face it, Donald Trump supporters and those desperate for some kind of figurehead in a time of great despair, and this is the best they've got. There's a lot of similarities there. Cue picture of Pam saying it's the same picture. But is a comparison between the Book of Mormon and Fox News, Donald Trump, Joseph Smith fair? Probably not, but then again, every single organisation, religious organisation, is the absolute quintessence of bias. So anyway, the first interaction was Leo coming up and saying,
well, you can basically discredit anything you want with ChatGPT. You can pull the same trick with the Bible easily, but you have to ask the right questions and not be biased.
This is true. A carefully crafted set of prompts can indeed persuade ChatGPT or any kind of chatbot, Gemini or whoever your AI data harvester of choice. If you use the correct prompts, you can convince it to say anything. But I think what Leo is trying to say here, I just realised it's another Leo. What is with Leos? But anyway, so it's trying to say that you can manipulate prompts to get to an end result. This is true. I've done it myself. I've managed to get ChatGPT convinced that the GOP is a new second coming of the Third Reich. It took about 20 minutes, a lot of prompting, and if you can, like I said before, if you continue on the same chain, you can get it to do bloody anything. However, in this example, I immediately started, I had no cookies, I deleted all the cookies for ChatGPT, Gemini, whoever I used at the time. I think it might have been Gemini. And basically, the questions I asked it, as I've seen in my previous video, were the first iterations of that cookie. If you know what a cookie is, you know what a cookie is. It's basically, it keeps a record on that. If you delete it, it has to start again. So, Leo continues with his preamble.
I appreciate your willingness to share your thoughts. As a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I'd like to respond to each of these points with some clarification and context. Much of what you've said includes common criticisms that are either incomplete, misrepresented, or lack historical context.
I tend not to do things by halves, but I do a lot of research where necessary, see my previous videos for context. But, and I've done this before, I will stand corrected when necessary, unlike a few flat earthers, or a few hundred flat earthers I could mention.
1. He repeated the same phrase at the start of over 1,300 passages. You're referring to the phrase, "and it came to pass" in the Book of Mormon. This is a standard phrase in ancient Semitic writing, especially in Hebrew narrative structure, not a copying of the King James Bible. It appears frequently in the Old Testament KJV, and is actually a legitimate linguistic marker in translated ancient texts. Modern translations like the NIV omit it for stylistic reasons, not because it's fake.
Claiming it was just something they said at the time is a very flimsy excuse, considering the numbers involved. The King James Bible contains approximately 622,700 words. The Book of Mormon contains approximately 269,000 words. So the Book of Mormon is 2.3 times shorter than the King James Version of the Bible. However, the phrase I spoke about, "and it came to pass," in the King James Version Old Testament, approximately 116 occurrences per 100,000 words. For the Book of Mormon, which remember, 2.3 times shorter, approximately 521 occurrences per 100,000 words. That's 4.5 times more in the King James Bible, and it's a shorter book. That's not just an example of how they spoke at the time. That's a confidence trickster, using the same phrase over and over again to give himself a bit of mental space to conjure up the next shovel full of hooey, so to speak. The next section, he does actually go into polygamy. I'm not going to talk about that now because I've got a big bit at the end, so stick around.
He was a convicted criminal. Joseph was never convicted of any capital or felony crime. He was arrested multiple times, often on trumped-up or politically motivated charges.
Oh yes, the old vexatious lawsuit approach. There's someone else in recent memory who, despite being convicted and charged with several felonies of varying degrees, has constantly and consistently claimed that every single charge is completely trumped up, excuse me, and untrue, even though there was a mountain of evidence against his words. Joseph Smith was arrested so many times there's a standalone Wikipedia page about it. You can claim once or twice might have been, arbitrary and trumped up, but as the old saying goes, once is accidental, twice is coincidental, 3 times is a pattern.
But never legally convicted of anything serious.
Interesting use of the word there, legally convicted. Just because you don't want the convictions to have any legal standing doesn't mean they didn't. It's interesting also that Joseph Smith actively pursued positions of legal stature and power so that he could kind of tweak the laws to suit his own ends.
Fleeing unjust legal threats, especially in Missouri, where he was nearly executed without trial, does not automatically imply guilt.
Again, by your indoctrinated standards. Disagreeing with a criminal proceeding just because it shows your wonderful profit in an unflattering light doesn't make them in any way unjust.
4. He ordered the destruction of a press. Yes, he authorized the Nauvoo City Council, which had legal municipal powers, to declare the Nauvoo Expositor a public nuisance. This was not about silencing criticism. It was due to the paper's open calls for violence and inciting chaos in Nauvoo. Many 19th century cities suppressed incendiary presses. It was controversial, yes, but it was a legal municipal decision, not a despotic one.
The Nauvoo Expositor did not explicitly ask for violence and chaos. What it did do was describe Joseph Smith and his followers as tyrannical and corrupt, using language best described as inflammatory, which in all honesty probably did inflame the conflict between Mormons and non-Mormons, which, might I remind you, would not have happened at all if Joseph Smith hadn't started steamrolling into random towns and trying to snap up all the wives, which the Expositor did go into in depth, which is half the reason for most of the conflict. But I'll be going into that a little bit more later. Also, the legal municipal powers you refer to were written by Joseph Smith and his cohorts themselves. He created laws to enforce the laws that did nothing but empower himself. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Remind you of anyone else? By the way, what supposedly peace-loving fledgling religious organisation has a militia?
Joseph was killed shortly after turning himself in over this very issue.
Now, this is actually quite interesting, and I didn't actually know this. Now, I know that Joseph Smith was killed by an angry mob, according to the songs in the Book of Mormon. Joseph was killed by an angry mob and knew he'd soon be done. You must lead the people now, my good friend Brigham Young. Very good song, actually. So I'm going to have to read it. You know what my memory's like. So basically, as I said, this is very interesting, and it's a very interesting example of how a narrative or an established set of facts can be distorted and twisted to show somebody in a positive light. Now, when the press was destroyed, Joseph Smith a warrant was arranged for arrest for Joseph Smith for the destruction of the press and also for treason. Of course, like I said, it was seen as illegal by people that were outside of Joseph Smith's influence and control. Smith and other members of the council were charged with inciting a riot and treason against the state. After an arrest warrant was issued for Smith, he declared martial law that in a town that he was governing or mayoring, whatever that is, and he mobilised the city militia, the Nauvoo Legion, of which he was a commander-in-chief, holding the rank of lieutenant general. Self-imposed military leadership. It's like someone who let 6 casinos get bankrupt, appointing himself commander-in-chief. In response to this, General Ford raised a militia, peacefully entering Nauvoo to search for Joseph Smith, who had illegally fled the state again. Now, if you read some of the comments, I don't think I've got it in I basically copied and pasted most of what he said. He's claiming that fleeing a state doesn't necessarily indicate guilt. It doesn't make you look good either. But here's the twist. The reason he so nobly handed himself in, as you claim, was because on June 27th that year, Smith offered an order to the Nauvoo Legion to come and break him out of jail. Another illegal act. He didn't do it out of the goodness of his own heart and his own conviction of his innocence. He only did it because he knew someone was going to break into the prison and get him out of there. That's not noble. That's a scumbag. Yeah, so on June the 7th of that year, Smith offered an order to Nauvoo Legion Commander Jonathan Dunham, instructing him to bring the Legion to Carthage and stage a jailbreak. Joseph Smith's militia somehow got an order to disband, so they just turned around and went home. Another group of people who were after Joseph Smith for his criminality went to the prison at Carthage, got into the prison. There was only a few guards guarding, I think it was Joseph Smith and his brother Hiram, and of course they were quite alarmed. This rowdy rabble was outside. Really, Centurion, I'm surprised to see you rattled by a rabble of rowdy rebels. So, life of Brian in my head. And Joseph Smith, arrogantly and rather stupidly, assumed they were his chums come to break him out of jail so he could flee justice yet again. Unfortunately, him telling the guards, "Don't worry guys, it's my guys, it's all good," it was the wrong guys. They came in, big rabble, bang bang. Joseph and his brother Hiram were dead.
He refused to retranslate the lost 116 pages. Joseph didn't refuse out of stubbornness. He said he was commanded by God not to.
Rules 2 and 2a. God told me to do it. God told me not to do it. There is no God. The decision not to retranslate the 116 missing pages, as stated before, he still had the template, he still had the tricolor, sacre bleu, remember that? And he refused to, because he was a petulant child. But there was actually a follow-up to this that I wasn't immediately aware of before. Let us continue.
That the Book of Mormon plates included a second account of the same history, which he translated instead. This was mentioned before the pages were lost. See Book of Mormon Introduction, Words of Mormon.
So what actually happened apparently was there was a follow-up book written in 1981, 150 years, just about 150 years after the original Book of Mormon, that explains away all the little contradictions and little things like the 116 missing pages. Unfortunately, that doesn't hold a lot of water. Something written 150 years after the fact to explain that something that happened 150 years ago is just making up excuses. It's apologetics. Trying to claim that a book written, where are we now? God blimey, 44 years ago, explains something that happened nearly 200 years ago. My God, that's made me feel amazingly old. Doesn't hold any water at all. Is no excuse, no reason, no explanation. 150 years ago, Joseph Smith, commanded only by his own arrogance, and might I say a little bit of stupidity, decided not to retranslate the books verbatim, which he could have done, but instead tried desperately to remember what he'd said over the course of a few hours, a few days before, and did a second version of the same story. So yes, I'm sorry, that's no explanation whatsoever.
Joseph were faking the whole thing. Redoing the 116 pages would have been easy, but his choice reinforces, not weakens, his claim of inspiration.
The fact that you believe that just shows not only how lost you actually are, but also how much of a charlatan Joseph Smith actually was. Again, Golden Rules 2 and 2a. There is no God. God is not an excuse. God is not a reason. Joseph Smith was not commanded by anybody not to retranslate the plates for no other reason that he couldn't remember what he said before. It's just so staggeringly obvious, and it's tragic that some people can't see that.
Martin Harris later said the witnesses only saw the plates in visions. This is a distortion. Martin Harris once used the word spiritual eyes, which critics misuse. All three witnesses testified repeatedly, in print and in person, that they saw the plates and heard the voice of God. The 8 witnesses physically handled the plates. These were not vague dreams. They described a tangible, real experience, and none of them ever denied their testimony, even when leaving the church.
Martin Harris, who is probably one of the most well-known and prolific of the 3 witnesses, has said on multiple occasions he never physically saw the golden plates. He only saw them in visions and dreams and spiritually. In fact, he actually said to the person who was the typesetter, the person who put all the, the little old school typesetting, his name was John H. Gilbert, and this is testimonial. He said to him, I did not see them as I do that pencil case, yet I saw them with the eye of faith. I saw them just as distinctly as I see anything around me. So these people were so inured in their faith, they honestly believe that the things they see in visions are real things. That's textbook indoctrination / the old Stockholm syndrome as well. So Martin Harris and others, they probably did absolutely 100% believe that having a vision of something, because you are so faithful and so close to the author, the creator of that faith, that something you see in a vision or indeed in a dream, or something you are psychosomatically suggested, borderline hypnosis, probably not. But you are told, if you saw it in a dream and it's connected to the Book of Mormon, the Golden Plates, Moroni, Mormon, if it's connected to them and you saw it in a dream, then it's real. What's the word I'm looking for? Manipulation. That's the word I'm looking for. Psychological manipulation. Like I said, it was a con man. Several other witnesses, including David Whitmer, who was again one of the first three, and I think related to most of the 8, has said it was in an open field, it was in the spirit, it was a vision. So that's 2 of the 3. Now, several of the other witnesses, there was 11 witnesses overall, and as I say, some were related to each other. There was a whole bit. Go into the comment section of the previous video. He goes on about talking about some of the disciples of Jesus and how some of those were related. Doesn't matter if what they're saying is false, even if they believe it's true. If they have been psychologically manipulated into believing that things they see in visions, things they see in dreams are, and obviously when you've got this much suggestion, subliminal suggestions being put into your head all the time that the plates are real, and if you see them in a dream, that means they're real. This is only my guesswork. However, let's be under no illusion. There was no God, there was no golden plates. Everything that Joseph Smith said was a lie. And the fact that he didn't want that many people, only the most very, very faithful people, to be witness to the golden plates, and he didn't have them out in public and no one else could see them, apart from only the people in his closest circle, just shows how unlikely it is they actually existed in the first place. But another thing you have to think about, and if you're a follower of my channel and a lot of the things I talk about, there are a lot of people I talk about who know they are wrong, who know they have been caught in a lie, but will continue to carry on with that lie to save face. David Weiss, Level F Observer, Nathan Oakley, Nathan Thompson, not so much Jaron now, but he's still going on about the moon thing. You know what I mean. All these people know they are wrong. They have been told they are wrong, and they have been told why they are wrong with evidence and receipts to back it up, and they still continue to claim the things they claim because they don't want to look bad. It's the same thing.
Lastly, I'm sorry your experiences with missionaries didn't go very far. That can happen when a conversation turns combative, or if there's no sincere exchange.
Well, I can't remember if I went on to this over this in my last video, but my tenet is this. If any religious person approaches me on the street, they are insulting me. They're insulting everybody that they approach. I think I did go over this, but I'll just go over it because I think it bears repeating. When someone approaches me, they are making an assumption about my life, what I have done, what I have achieved, the struggles I've been through, and I have been through a few. If you see one of my previous videos for examples, I've been through some shit in my life, and I've got through it. For using nothing else but the love of the people around me, the friendship of the people around me, and my own sheer bloody self-determinedness, if that's even a bloody word. But the point is, how dare you, a 19-year-old, 20-year-old, know nothing, brainwashed lackey of a charlatan, approach me and tell me that you know how to lead a better life than I do? How dare you? I've said before, I've helped to raise £75,000 for charity. I've been first on site for two road traffic accidents, and I rendered first aid for no other reason than I wanted to, and it's in my altruistic nature. And what was the other thing? Oh, I tried to get the petition for the bingo hall to turn into a theatre to help enrich the cultural lives of thousands of people I will never meet. I will never know. I just wanted to do it because I thought it would be better for other people. And you got It's the picture of the two kids, two 19-year-old boys setting out for the first time in life with this book that was written by a 19th century con man. Get out of my face.
Also, missionaries are not theologians. Their mission is not to go deeply into the history of the church or even discuss deep doctrine. Their mission is to introduce the restored church to people, testify of Christ, and invite to be baptized. Anything more, and they are not focusing on their mission.
This is also a very interesting statement. Missionaries are not theologians. They are just told to get on with it. Don't think about it. Just follow the narrative. Get as many people into the flock as possible, but don't question why. The chap who is trying to convince me that I was wrong about everything, but then he comes up and says their mission is to introduce a restored church to people, testify, and invite to be baptized. Anything more, they are not focusing on their mission. So they're literally, by divine doctrine, going out blindly and brainlessly, may matter, with a tiny little book, telling people this is the way, but not explaining why it's the way. That's very interesting and also very telling. Tell me you're in a cult without telling me you're in a cult. Am I right?
Latter-day Saints, including myself, are open to serious, respectful dialogue. You're free to disbelieve, of course. But if you want to criticize, do it based on the full historical record, not memes or TikTok-level summaries.
I see you're not familiar with my previous works. I see you're also completely unfamiliar with how social media works.
The restoration is either true or it isn't.
Don't count on it! Oh!
But mocking it doesn't make it false. And faith based on sincere study, personal revelation, and spiritual witness is just as valid as skepticism. Again, the things you have shared, your research has come from antagonistic sources of the church, not faithful or balanced sources.
So my research has come from antagonistic sources. Wikipedia isn't antagonistic, it's factual. Wikipedia, Google, you can talk about articles that are biased against the Book of Mormon when they're not. They're just telling you how the Book of Mormon came about. But again, it's the old adage, you can't use the Bible to prove the Bible, you can't use the Book of Mormon to prove the events in the Book of Mormon actually happened. They are possibly the most biased sources of information. You want to learn if the Bible is true? The worst book you can read to find that out is the Bible. The Book of Mormon, same thing. If you read the Book of Mormon, the only thing you find out is what's in the Book of Mormon. There's no counterpoints. There's no one looking from the outside in saying, hang on a minute, this is a bloke reading golden plates by shoving his head in a hat. Mocking a farcical religion doesn't make it false. You're absolutely true. Doing a lot of research and finding out how much a bunch of baloney actually is, that's what makes it false. And you'd be amazed how easy it was to find that out.
Imagine someone interested in become a Protestant, and they go to an atheist who detests the Bible. You would think the Bible is pretty rotten. Just be aware of your sources.
Yeah, I really don't know what kind of point he's trying to make here. He's absolutely correct. If you want to learn about religion, don't go to an atheist. We have a nasty habit of bringing up subjects like why thou shalt not keep slaves wasn't one of the 10 Commandments. You're allowed to stone your child to death if he talks back to you. And if somebody, your daughter, her can actually marry her if he pays you 50 shekels, then they have to be married and he's not allowed to divorce her. Who's being punished there? There was a break in the narrative there. I think he got to the end of that point, sat around for 5 minutes and thought, oh, I've got more to say. So he came on to a load more, and like I said earlier, it was a lot about the witnesses and what else? I can't remember. Whatever. It was. I've gone over it before. It was the witness testimonies and how they didn't recount their stories. But I've said that before. If you're so far down your own personal rabbit hole, it's very hard to dig yourself out without making yourself look like an idiot. Pride comes before a fall. But it's at this point also I decided to look into who this person was. This Leo Michael, whatever the hell he is. It's on the previous page and I can't be asked to look back. He has a channel that there's no videos. It's basically his channel where he chooses whatever. And he has playlists. And there's one playlist that really caught my eye. And it's a playlist dedicated to eradicating the rights of women to have full bodily autonomy over what happens to their bodies. Fills in all the gaps very unpleasantly. Now I knew what I was dealing with. And it goes some way to the rather sickening and crass apologetics, well, for child marriage and polygamy in general. I don't know if I'm going to get heated here, but let's see how we get on. But I mentioned in my previous video about, and I will put my hands up and say, I looked at the wrong sources or the wrong info about, what was her name? Helen Mar Kimball, who was a 14-year-old child that Joseph Smith married, or so to speak. I'll go into that in a second. And this was his response to that whole 14-year-old bride and the whole polygamy thing.
What about Helen Mar Kimball? Helen Mar Kimball was sealed to Joseph Smith in May 1843. Her birthday was August 22, 1828, so she was 14 years and 9 months old at the time, closer to 15 than 14.
Oh, so that makes it perfectly okay then. It's all right, lads, don't worry. She wasn't 14, she was nearly 15, so it's all okay. I will accept, hands up, there's no written documentation of any physicality between Joseph Smith and the 14-year-old bride. But what I did find out was that the bride, 14-year-old Helen Mar Kimball, thought it was a marriage. And she was actually majorly disappointed that what happened was nothing more than a ceremony. And it wasn't a marriage, it was a sealing.
Eternity-only sealings. These were sealings performed for the next life only, not involving cohabitation or marital relations in this life. Many of Joseph Smith's sealings with women who were already married to other men fell into this category. The purpose was to link families together eternally, not to form a traditional marriage in mortality.
So what was the point? What was the point of polygamy without Congress? Unless it's just to possess as many people for your own personal gratification. There were no divine orders from the Lord. Rule 2. God told me to do it. No, he bloody didn't, because there is no God. Polygamy, at its very base description, is misogyny manifest, no matter how much divine influence you want to try and paint it with. It's trying to own as many women as possible as your own personal possessions and using God as an excuse. The final part of the comment was trying to explain that child marriage was absolutely fine because that's what it was done at the time. Sorry, but that doesn't actually wash these days in a rational society.
What was the normal age for marriage at that time? In the 1840s, especially on the American frontier, girls often married between ages 15 to 20 and sometimes earlier. Marriages at age 14 or 15 were not unusual by 19th century standards, particularly in rural or frontier communities. For example, Joseph's own wife Emma was around 21 when they married. This doesn't mean we'd accept or endorse such ages today, but we should avoid judging past behavior by modern standards.
No, we should, and I bloody will, thank you very much. Things that were okay because they were done at the time, as I said before, slavery, stoning your children, sending your daughter into prostitution. These things are not to be respected just because they were done at the time. Even though the Book of Mormon was written 150 years ago, human biology, physiology, and everything about people is pretty much the same. There's not a lot that has changed in 150 years. We know by extensive studies of adolescent maturity that there is a point up until, and it's judged by society as well, where a teenager, an adolescent, a post-pubescent adolescent can be regarded as being not 100% aware of the repercussions of their actions. This is why we have age limits on sex, smoking, drinking, anything you like. These are all judged by things we have learnt and experienced over the years. So up to a certain point, a person in a certain stage of maturity, some people mature faster than others, some people don't. However, there is a cut-off. I'm finding it hard to get my words out, so I'm going to have to read this script. There is an age where a post-pubescent person can be judged to be in a state where they are legally and mentally incapable of being 100% aware of the repercussions of their actions. You can call this the age of culpability, or in some cases, the age of criminal responsibility, depending on the circumstances. The point is, if a girl in America at the moment can be judged as being mentally incapable of making such a life-changing decision, so 14, nearly 15, whatever, if she can't be trusted to make a life-changing decision like getting sealing, married, whatever, to a 35-year-old man, the same can be said for a girl 15 decades ago. It doesn't make it sound that long ago when I put it that way, does it? But the flip side of that, of course, is A creepy 35-year-old man going around state to state, plucking women, children, marrying them, sealing them, convincing their families, and in some cases husbands, they're already married, to seal with them or have all these different stages of marriage. And his only explanation he had was God told him to do it.
Rule 1. If you claim God did it, said it, or commanded it, this automatically negates all of those aspects immediately, as none of those things actually happened. These are statements made by man to terrorize, command, and rule over others.
That's basically the end of that. There was quite a bit, and yeah, I nearly got through the end of it without having to resort to the script alone, but hey-ho. So yes, nothing this man has said, this person has said, has changed my mind in any way whatsoever about the validity and the reliability of the word of Joseph Smith, the words within the Book of Mormon, and the explanation for the Book of Mormon's creation. It's all a bunch of garbage. There's no other explanation for it. The concept of a man who was, before he created the Book of Mormon, a fraudster, a criminal, a wrong-un, a ne'er-do-well, and all of a sudden he becomes this benevolent, and he is the chosen one, that the angel Moroni came down and blessed him with the knowledge of the golden plates, buried by the tree on a hill in his backyard in Rochester, New York. By the way, the Garden of Eden, it's not in wherever, it's in Jackson County, Missouri. Yeah, I know. Remember what I said about Joseph Smith reading the Bible and saying, you know what this book needs more of? America. Yeah. If there's anything to be said in a positive light, he was a patriot. He wanted to get a bit more of America thrown into the Bible, and the only way he could do it was write, as I said before, it's a fanfic. Unfortunately, so many people have been taken in by this utter bunkum. And I just feel so very sorry for them. But like I say, nothing this man has said has convinced me that what I said before was wrong. And anything he says after this, I will apply the 4 rules I said before. God didn't tell anybody to do it, there is no God. God didn't tell anybody not to do it, there is no God. The contents of the Book of Mormon do not prove the Book of Mormon. The formation or the story of how the Book of Mormon came to be, and all the history and the witnesses, etc., cannot be trusted because they are from the words of 1835 Donald Trump. And what was the first rule again? Oh, I think I just said it. If you claim God did it, said it, or commanded it, automatically negates absolutely everything you're going to say. So if you're going to follow up with this, and I really hope you don't, because I know what kind of person you are now, and I don't want you anywhere near my channel. If you're that type of person who's going to make an entire playlist about how abortion is evil, and it's all got Ben Shapiro, video after video, you and I can't be friends. I'm sorry. I did say before my previous one about, well, it's polygamy is subjugation of women. It's misogyny manifest. And so why this person decided to become a Mormon and also has an entire playlist dedicated to anti-abortion videos? Just get the hell away from me. Okay, that will do for that. Thank you very much for watching. I probably won't do this. Will probably be it. If there's any more interesting comments, I might follow up. But it's all going to be more of the same. Follow the 4 rules. Anything they say, anything they do, anything they said, anything they said they didn't say, anything they said they had to do, anything they said they didn't have to do. I'm running out of fingers. It's all garbage. God doesn't rule. Done.